They knew her by her reputation, but heaven knew her by her faith. In the heart of a fortified city, where towering walls held secrets and sins in equal measure, lived a woman whose name turned heads and raised eyebrows. Rahab. In Jericho, that name didn't belong to a noblewoman or a priestess. It belonged to a prostitute, a harlot, a woman dismissed by society, known only for the men who came and went from her door. But what the people of Jericho couldn't see, what only heaven knew, was that Rahab carried something far more powerful than shame. She carried faith. Not the kind you're born into, not the kind that grows up in tradition or ceremony, but a raw, risky, rebellious kind of faith that dares to believe without ever seeing. This is not just a story about hiding spies or letting down a red rope. This is the story of a woman who heard whispers of a foreign god, one she had never seen, never met, never even worshipped, and yet she believed. When everyone else trusted in Jericho's stone walls, Rahab trusted in an invisible promise. When others closed their doors in fear, she opened hers in faith. And that one decision, one act of courage in the dark, shifted the course of her destiny. In every generation, there are women who rise, not because of perfection, but because of obedience. And Rahab? She was crowned with legacy, not despite her past, but because she believed in a future she couldn't see. She took a risk that no one understood, and God took a risk on her. So today, let's peel back the curtain of shame. Let's look past the labels. Because what if the very thing you're ashamed of is the foundation for your faith? What if your greatest mistake is just the setting for your greatest miracle? This is Crowned and Called. These are stories of purpose, women of power. And today, we step into the shadows of a city doomed to fall, to meet the redeemed risk-taker whose name is still whispered in heaven. Welcome to the story of Rahab. The city of Jericho was a fortress, not just of stone, but of fear. Word had reached them, tales of a God who split seas and shattered armies. The Israelites were coming, and everyone inside the city walls was trembling. Everyone, except one. Rahab had heard the same stories, but instead of fear, something else stirred in her heart. Maybe it was curiosity, maybe it was longing, or maybe, just maybe, it was faith already taking root in the most unlikely soil. Then came the night that would change everything. Two strangers appeared at her door, foreigners with dust on their feet and caution in their eyes. They were not like the usual men who visited her. These were spies from Israel, sent to scout out the city before the attack. Rahab could have turned them away. She could have screamed and alerted the guards. She could have protected her own reputation and avoided the risk. But she didn't. Instead, she opened her door and her heart. She hid the spies on her roof, under stalks of flax. When soldiers came knocking, demanding to know where the men had gone, she lied, boldly, purposefully, not out of rebellion, but out of revelation. Because Rahab had already made her decision. She would no longer serve the gods of Jericho. She would no longer trust in the strength of city walls. She was aligning herself with the God of Israel. And that's what real faith looks like. It's not always clean or pretty. Sometimes it hides in the shadows. Sometimes it lies to protect life. Sometimes it chooses obedience over optics. Rahab's faith wasn't formed in a temple. It was born in a moment of decision, under a roof soaked in risk. Before the spies left, she made a request. "Swear to me," she said, "that when your people come, you'll spare my family." And the spies agreed. But there was a condition. She had to hang a scarlet cord from her window. That would be the sign, the symbol, the mark of her covenant. And with trembling hands, she tied that red rope, letting it trail from the tower where shame once lived, now declaring her faith for all to see. Rahab didn't need years of sermons. She didn't have a lifetime of religious training. But she had one moment, and she made it count. That's all God needs. One yes, one step, one risk. And Rahab, she took it. The scarlet cord wasn't just a symbol. It was a statement. In a city destined for destruction, this thread of red became a lifeline. It wasn't tied to her title. It didn't wave a resume of good deeds. It whispered something stronger. I believe. As the Israelites marched around Jericho, day after day, the people mocked them. But Rahab waited. She watched. And above her window, the red rope swayed, unassuming but powerful. It was a mark of alignment, a declaration of trust, not in what she could do, but in who God was. When the walls finally fell, when the city crumbled in dust and fire, one home remained standing. One window still held a rope, now soaked in the dust of deliverance. Rahab's home. Her faith saved not just herself, but her entire family. Let that settle in for a moment. One woman's decision became the salvation of generations. One act of courage rewrote an entire family's story. But God didn't stop there. He took this once shamed woman and brought her into the very lineage of Jesus. Rahab married Salmon, one of the leaders of Judah. Together, they had a son named Boaz. Yes, the same Boaz who would one day marry Ruth. From them came Obed, then Jesse, and then David. And from David's line came the Messiah. Do you understand the gravity of that? Rahab, the prostitute, became the great-great-grandmother of Jesus Christ, not by erasing her past, but by redeeming it. Her faith didn't just save her, it honored her. And that's how God works. He doesn't choose the polished, the perfect, or the privileged. He crowns the called. He elevates the faithful. He rewrites stories others have already thrown away. So, when people remember Rahab, let them remember the red cord. Let them remember that it wasn't her reputation that mattered. It was her revelation, and that same redemption is available to you. Let them talk about who you used to be. Let them point to your past. Let them whisper behind curtains and cast shadows with their words. Because in heaven, your name has already changed. Your legacy has already been rewritten, and your faith has already been seen. Rahab didn't wait to become perfect. She just made a choice, and because of that choice, history remembers her not as a harlot, but as a heroine. What red rope are you willing to hang today? What bold step are you ready to take before the miracle happens? Maybe your home feels like it's surrounded by enemies. Maybe the walls are shaking. But when your heart is marked by faith, even the strongest walls can't bury your destiny. Because when the world collapses around you, God remembers the ones who trust Him in secret. Rahab's story is not ancient history. It's modern prophecy. Every day, women are rising. Women who are dismissed. Women who are labeled. Women who are called everything but chosen. But you are crowned. You are called. So rise up. Tie your red rope. Stand in your window of faith. And watch what God does when obedience meets opportunity. This is Crowned and Called. Stories of purpose. Women of power. Subscribe, share, and step into the lineage of legacy. Because when the walls fall, you'll still be standing.